Everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino, and I'm here with something that I've wanted to do all week long. I've wanted to break down the entire opening montage to Survivor 50, shot by shot. And that's exactly what we're going to do here today. So we've gone back and we've screen grabbed the entire opening montage to Survivor 50 to go through exactly what did and what didn't make the cut here in the opening minutes of Survivor 50. I thought that Survivor 50, that they really nailed the opening minutes overall to a landmark season that we've all been looking forward to. There was so much nostalgia. It was all the feels, and it really got you ready for this incredible season, which kicked off last Wednesday night. So let's start to go through it shot by shot and talk about everything we did and didn't see in the opening montage. And of course, no other place to begin than back on May 31st in the year 2000. And we know the opening episode of Survivor, the music hits, and it's, of course, that great soundtrack to the original season of Survivor. We open up in the Malaysian fishing village. Here we are, where 16 ordinary Americans are headed off, and we see, of course, shout out to America's sweetheart, Colleen Haskell, as we are being marooned and throwing stuff off the. I know they kind of did this in second chances at the start of the game, I believe, but we could have opened Survivor 50 with a shot like this with everybody getting thrown off of the boat, but that's not what we're doing in the Survivor anymore these days. And we get a shot of, I believe this is Colleen and maybe Sean in a race out into the first challenge in the opening minutes. And then here's Jenna Lewis competing. I believe this was the obstacle course that the Army set up for the Survivor players to compete in. Here's Jervis, of course. Who could ever forget Jervis? And he's like hitting his head before he ends up going against Stacy Stillman to eat the butak, and ultimately ends up being one of the landmark moments in the first season. Of course, we need to have Richard Hatch naked. I've seen this in real life, the genuine article. It was certainly memorable, to say the least. And of course, here's Richard back with clothes on here with Dr. Sean and Greg on the coconut phone. A rumor that was back in the rumor mill that Greg was going to be on Survivor 50. Unfortunately, this is as close as we're getting to Greg on the coconut phone. And then, of course, my buddy Rudy, he said, I don't even know what MTV means. And I hope I never find out. And that was Rudy. Great to see him here in the opening minutes of Survivor 50. Rich and Sue, and hey, this ain't corporate America. We're out here in the bush. From a great moment from the first episode of Survivor, and Richard in the tree, and they always talk about this as that Richard, that he was so cocky. They thought he was going to be the first person voted out. Of course, he goes on to win the whole show. Here it is, Survivor, and we get a clip to, I guess this is CBS this morning. The Jane Pauley is here to talk about the landmark 25th season of Survivor. We then get so many flowers for Jenna Lewis here in this opening episode of the show. And of course, we know what's going to happen to Jenna by the end of the episode, but we see her back in Borneo getting voted out. Too bad her name wasn't Zelda, as Jay for Jenna is the vote that Jeff holds up when she gets voted out. And then we cut to the finale of Survivor Borneo with Rich and Kelly here in the final two. And of course, Sue Hawk. And she said that this island has two things, the snakes and the rats. And in the end, let Mother Nature do as it intended for the snake to eat the rat, which it actually did. And then Rich goes on to win Borneo. Lots of Borneo nostalgia here, and Richard Hatch ends up being crowned the winner of Survivor Borneo on the island. And then I thought, okay, are we getting a shot of every season? Are we going through it season by season? We get this Australian military aircraft where we get Survivor, the Australian outback. I'll always remember where I was following the Super Bowl, where the Giants played the Ravens, kind of a ho-hum Super Bowl, and unless you were a Ravens fan. And then we go right into Survivor, the Australian Outback. Everybody was like throwing up on the plane. Here's a shot of Colby in all his glory, not Superman in a fat suit, looking like Mike White. He's so ripped. And here's Colby setting I guess it was a record then because it was only the second season, but Colby carrying and showing everybody in America just how tough Colby was, going full tilt. Here's Elizabeth Filarski, who was rumored to be in the cast also of Survivor 50, but this is as close as we get to Elizabeth being back. And then we cut right to Survivor Africa. And of course, then I'm like, okay, here we go. But then we're going to start bouncing around. They mentioned that, okay, we're in the South Pacific. I'm not sure which season I don't think we jumped all the way to Survivor South Pacific, but one of these early seasons where we were in the South Pacific, Jeff doing daredevil stunts, hanging out of the helicopter like an a-hole, like I had called him in the Evolution of Strategy. This is dangerous. Don't do this. I'm glad Jeff doesn't do stuff like this anymore. Big Tom is here. Hey, Rob, look at me. I'm on the Survivor 50 premiere doing an SOS challenge. No shot of the late, great Kim Johnson in her thong with the feathers coming out. Here is Ozzy. Now we jump all the way from Survivor 3, jump 10 seasons out to Survivor Cook Islands. Here's young Ozzy and his back not toasted back in the day as he flies through a challenge. Here is Stephanie, and I'm assuming this is Stephanie back in Survivor Guatemala, but I'm Survivor Palau, but I'm wondering if maybe this could be Guatemala because I'd have to think that it was looking like the Guatemala buff. So we forget about Stephanie on Palau. Here's Stephanie in Guatemala. And then we get the shot of Lisi falling down. Okay, so I love the deep cut stuff that they put in here for some reason. That's a great moment when I think it's a matching game challenge, I believe, in Fiji, and she has to come out to take her turn and then just face plants. So great job for the editors putting that one in there. We've got then this, I believe we are back in Survivor Africa. And Brandon, if you're backstage, tell me if I have the wrong boulder challenge, but I do believe this is a famous challenge from Survivor Africa. And we have players getting rolled over with the ball. Okay, we go back to Australian Outback, Kimmy Kappenberg and my buddy Alicia Calloway. And she says, Brandon says he thinks that was Guatemala. That was Amy getting bowled over with the people always be getting rolled over by the boulder in Survivor. That's why they put the giant boulder out there to roll people over. Maybe not so safe, but they're going to keep doing it. Of course, that they will always put a boulder to roll people over. And Alicia was sick and tired of hearing about the chickens. And then Kimmy was like, hey, something, blah, blah, blah. And Alicia said, like, now, do not wag your finger in my face. I will always wag my finger in your face. And they go back and forth. And hey, that was conflict back in the Kucha tribe. Poor Elizabeth. She was like, I don't like this. I don't like this fighting. Only on The View. I like them when these women are fighting, but not right now at this moment. And of course, there's Alicia. We'd love to hear from Alicia. I don't know where she's been for the last 20 years. Okay. Oh, then Sandra, she can get loud too. What the F? From Survivor Pearl Islands. We get a shot here of, I believe this is Boston Rob taking down Colby in the episode in which Richard Hatch gets voted out in Survivor All-Stars. Of course, this challenge is probably more remembered for the Rich and Sue of it all. I'll say bad job on the editors for the aforementioned reason, but also because wrong attack zone challenge. Give me Rob with 2 Bs choking Clay and Jeff being like, no, you're not in the attack zone. Wrong attack zone challenge here. We get so much Boston Rob. Give me Clay and Rob and the other Rob with 2 Bs if you want to show people getting physical in the attack zone. And then, okay, we got a lot of Micronesia. That's not the idol. Okay, we'll come back to that, I believe. Then who can remember who can forget, I should say, Johnny Fairplay's Dead Grandma Lie. I got to give credit to Survivor, where there are some people that in the past were maybe persona non grata, big parts of the show. They swallowed their pride and included these great moments in here. Here's Johnny Fairplay with Thunder D. She died, dude. And then we're also going to then cut back to the Survivor Micronesia. And let's check in, of course, with the famous moment, Eric. This was one of the bonus episodes that we showed, the encore episodes right before we led up to Survivor 50. And Eric is going to give his individual immunity necklace. James was there that night and he said, I'm not the dumbest survivor anymore. But here he is in all his glory with his 2 hidden immunity idols that he gets voted out in back in Survivor China. Then we get like a bunch of like rapid cuts of players getting voted out. Here's Jerry Manthe. I believe this is Jerry getting voted out on All Stars. Then we see Parvati getting voted out in Cook Islands 1. We get Terry Dietz here getting voted out in Panama. Little Terry Dietz shout out. Jonathan Penner shows up here to get voted out back in the Cook Islands. Rupert ends up getting voted out. So much for my dreams, he once said. And then Judd. And this is a good deep cut, of course. More famous for, what does he say? I hope you get bit by a damn crocodile when he ends up getting voted out. So famous moment from like salty person getting voted out on Survivor. We love to see it. And what is it? Colby voted out here also from the Mogo Mogo. And Ozzy voted out in, I guess this must be Ozzy voted out in Micronesia. So there he is. Short hair Ozzy getting voted out. And here is Stephanie. I believe this is Stephanie now. We're seeing her left all alone back in Survivor Palau, what she's most famous for. And then we get a little bit of a montage of there was bad weather on Survivor. The sea was angry many days. And here's Tony dealing with a was it a typhoon? They had bad weather in the beginning of Cagayan. And then we see shelters getting knocked over in the wind. And I think this might be in millennials versus Gen X. We have to evacuate people from the beach. It was real. And then Jeff telling people about the weather, I believe, still. And then, things also, not only was the weather bad, but the conditions were bad too. We almost lost Beast Mode Cowboy even back in Survivor Ko-Rong. Remember that? And then this is was this Caleb? Which person is this getting medical treatment? Okay, let me see. This is Caleb, Beast Mode Cowboy, but he'll come back. Don't worry, he'll be back for Survivor Game Changers. And then this was really, I thought, one of the best touches that they included in here. Of course, the late great Keith Nail ends up in Survivor Second Chances. His great speech of Survivor's not fun. Going on a cruise is fun. This was, I thought, pitch perfect to have Keith here as one of the people that we've lost, and one of the very memorable moments from him. Then they show the whole moment. So really great job there. We get Eric Cardona getting clotheslined by a clothesline, and a fun moment, deep cut. Love to see that here from Survivor Samoa. We then get people getting hurt in the challenges. Of course, I hate this challenge. And this was also not just because it was the challenge that they ran when I got voted out in Survivor All-Stars, but it is just the most dangerous challenge that they can run on Survivor, where that they have giant puzzle pieces and people blindfolded, and Spencer, aka Ryman, ends up taking it on the shin here. Big Tom definitely got concussed in Survivor All-Stars, but every time they do this challenge, major injuries happen. I think this is post-swap in Survivor Second Chances. Of course, if they forgot to include this moment, I'm pissed. Here's Liz Wilcox after Q doesn't take her to Applebee's. Great moment from Survivor 46. another deep cut here is Will Sims 2 ends up going down the slide in a remarkable fashion. We get the Wilhelm scream also as Will slides down. One of the more random things that ends up making the cut of the great moments of 50 seasons of Survivor, but there it is. We get Boston Rob wiping out, really drunk on a reward challenge. This is in Survivor All Stars when they steal Kathy for the day and she hangs out on the boat with them. And they feel like, okay, we've got Kathy on our side. And then they're hitting golf balls off the back of the cruise ship. And then we go right from Boston Rob, fittingly, to Philip. And I believe this is Philip in Redemption Island. And really, we gave a real nice moment here to the specialist. So Survivor really highlighting the specialist. We get to see him do his dance, and he's very excited about what's going on with Stealth R Us. We get a little bit of James here. I'm not sure if James was doing anything particular, but a one-time fan favorite. We get a little bit of a Tony montage, and of course, Tony, one of the people on the Mount Rushmore of Survivor, can't do a montage about the greatness of 50 seasons without, of course, the great Tony Vlachos. Bing, bing, and his eyes are lighting up. Would have been nice to also see, oh my God, this is huge. And then Russell. Also, I'll give credit to the Survivor editors also for including Russell here. I think that it would have been certainly imaginable to think that they would just whitewash Survivor, Russell Hantz from the history of Survivor. He is unable. I was trying to say the word inextricably linked in Survivor history. You cannot tell the history of Survivor without Russell Hantz, and here he is finding idols without clues. And one of those idols that he finds ends up being given to Parvati, who then gives it to Sandra and to Jerry. Back in one of the greatest moments in Survivor history, Parvati's double idol play taking out JT in Heroes versus Villains. We get Angelina, can I have your jacket? Natalie. And then we end up getting Advantage Get In, where Cirie is going to end up giving a bit of a monologue that is going to be the background for what Survivor means to so many different people. And we're going to get a bunch of different shots over Cirie talking about what a great honor it is to her to have gotten the chance to play Survivor and how much she's grown from Survivor. Of course, Cirie ends up being the personification so much from Cirie crossing the balance beam to ultimately then going out of the game here in Advantage Get In, really setting up the unfinished business that Cirie has here with Survivor, coming back to U.S. Survivor for the 5th time. Here is Cirie crossing the balance beam, and a big moment for Cirie personally. I've said for years that this is the moment that I also believe soft launches the new era, when Survivor becomes less about people trying to win a prize on Survivor, but people actually going out to Survivor for the show to help people discover things about themselves that they didn't know that they can do. And I think that this moment from Game Changers truly was a game changer in the way that the show tells the stories of the players who come out to Survivor. It's much more about the journey of the players than it is about who is going to walk away with the $1 million. And I think that from this moment, I think that that really changes the way Survivor ends up going about telling its own story. Of course, we have Coach here from Survivor Tocantins when he goes to exile, a classic moment. We get a little, some duos. Malcolm and Denise get a little bit of a moment here. Would have been great to have seen Malcolm back on Survivor 50, but alas, no Malk. Then we get a little shout out to Steven and JT. Although I think it's fair to say that Rob and Steven have probably accomplished more at this point in history. We still love to show Steven and JT, one of the greatest duos in Survivor history. And then, of course, Rob and Amber. We get a lot of Rob and Amber here. We get Rob and Amber back in Chapera. We get the proposal of Boston Rob to Amber, and then we get to see a little bit of the outcome of Rob and Amber finding each other in Survivor All-Stars. Robin Amber's four girls coming to visit them on the edge of extinction in Winners at War. I think this might be the only Winners at War clip that we get throughout this whole thing. So for Survivor's last big anniversary season, a lot of hype, but really not too many moments that we take away from that. And then we got Ethan, a little shout out back to Ethan Zahn in Survivor Africa. When he goes into the Kenya village, he ends up playing hacky sack with the kids. It ends up becoming a thing that really ends up changing the whole course of Ethan's life, where he starts grassroots soccer and does so much good work with the people, trying to help the people who were in the country that he actually won Survivor. So nice moment with Ethan. And then we are going to start highlighting some of the season 50 cast. Here's Dee competing and winning individual immunity. We get Charlie winning his immunity. I believe this is when Tiffany goes home in this episode. We see Joe and Eva. We're going to, I think, come back to that also later on in this montage. And then we get highlights of some of the new era winners, and not all of them. Okay, we get Marianne, Jam, Dee, Kyle, Savannah. So sorry for you, Erica, Gabler. Who else? Kenzie, Rachel. Sorry for you, other new era winners. Not you didn't make the montage. Okay, and then we get a little bit of a setup to this was a night that we were in attendance at the Survivor 48 premiere, where Jeff announced the In the Hands of the Fans idea. And so we set up what we're doing for 50, and then we start to get to some of the present day shots from the show of everybody flying out to Fiji, and we see some shots of people getting on the plane, but also flashing back to them back in the day. Here is Chrissy. I think this might be the first Chrissy shot we see in the montage. I believe this is Chrissy from when they did the reward challenge, where it was her versus Ben in the pick a black or white rock out of the bag, and you have to match telepathically with your loved one. And so I think this was Chrissy saying goodbye to her husband, I believe, in that shot. Then we get Stephanie once again. I do think this is Stephanie again from Guatemala and not Palau, because I think this is the same bathing suit that she had on from that other shot. We see, of course, Joe and Eva. No history of Survivor would be complete without Joe going to give Eva a hug. And then here's Colby. I believe this might be, is this Colby getting frog marched by Colby at the, or Colby getting frog marched by Coach at the start of Survivor Heroes versus Villains? And then Christian, of course, winning the Great Immunity Challenge back in David versus Goliath, where he ends up going over 5 hours competing against Alec. Here is Camilla winning a challenge back as she was coming on towards the end of Survivor 48. And then here's Tiffany, but also here's Banu. He didn't win $1 million, but getting a few more hearts here in the opening montage for Survivor 50. Here's Jonathan with his tribe back in Survivor 42. Must have helped his tribe win something there, because everybody is gathered around him. And here's Emily Flippin hugging Bruce. Such a nice moment for Emily and Bruce to come full circle. And of course, here is Q in all his glory, getting ready for Survivor 50 back when his first season. And here is Genevieve, I believe, giving a hug to Sue Smay. And Kyle winning the final four immunity as he has won some motion here in Survivor 48. Ozzy wins the final 6 challenge in Survivor South Pacific and does the classic punching the puzzle. And then Coach, as he is battling JT in the final 5 challenge in Survivor Tocantins. Here is Aubrey. She's coming and hugging Jeff during Survivor Game Changers for some reason. And then, of course, we got to go back to Suri. Remember, she voted out Eric Breitenbach, and I believe that is all of our opening montage to Survivor 50. So I think it was a really great job of what they did to get you ready for Survivor 50. You walked away Very pumped up. Let me do a couple of snubs of things that I think could have been in there. And I will say probably the most notable snub in terms of moments that the show could have highlighted. Wentworth does not count. I think that that was one of the huger moments. I went back to, hey, this is huge. I went back to Mike Bloom had conducted a poll of all of the 25 greatest moments in Survivor history. And I think that was the one that was from the top 10 moments in Survivor history that did not make the cut. And I don't think we got any Wentworth at all in the opening montage of the show. A couple other things that we didn't see in the opening montage. We don't talk about Sierra voting on her mom anymore. That was like the biggest thing ever on Survivor for like a couple of years. Now we don't even talk about that. She voted out her mom. We don't even get that anymore. I think that we could have got Billy Garcia. I mean, if we got Lacey falling down and face planting, we could have got Billy Garcia saying that he's found true love in Candace from the Railroad Tribe. I think that we could have gotten that moment. Yowman and Dreams, we could have gotten some of that. And there were a few people that we could have seen, some other legends. I'll stick up for Tyson. We could have seen a little Tyson here as we're going through the 50 seasons of the show. No Jeremy, no Kim. And I feel like we could have seen Jesse and Carolyn here also as we go through everything from Survivor's 50 season. So overall, I thought a really great job to open up the season. I'm so pumped up to see the rest of how Survivor 50 is going to play out. We've got so much podcast coverage coming your way. Thanks for going on this journey with me back through the opening minutes of Survivor 50, and make sure you're subscribed to hear everything else we have coming your way all through Survivor 50. And if you love hearing about classic moments in Survivor history, boy, do I have the book for you. It's called The Tribe and I Have Spoken. We go through all of the greatest moments and players in Survivor history and take you on a journey of 25 years of how did we go from Sue and Rich and everybody back in Borneo all through the new era, and what role did the fan community of Survivor play in that journey? Talk about it all here in The Tribe and I Have Spoken. You can check it out at robhasabook.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. This is RHAP. We know reality TV.